Hello and welcome to this podcast, which is part of a series called Inventing Embodiment. My name is Jonathan Burrows. I'm a choreographer and also a faculty member at the Centre for Dance Research at Coventry University. Last year, my colleagues at CDARE met online once a week to talk, and the conversation kept coming back to the question of how we speak about embodiment. This podcast aims to capture some of the research I was fortunate to hear then. My guest this morning is Rosemary Cisneros, who is a dance scholar at CDARE. Welcome, Rosa.
Hello, welcome. Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what you're researching at the moment?
At the moment, I am researching and working a lot with communities and co-creating either a children's book or a piece of artwork, and working a lot with Roma women and vulnerable communities. And so how communities can connect or reconnect with their bodies through dance or breathing or the process of making something.
Right, and in what ways is the concept of embodiment important or not to your research?
Embodiment is incredibly important to my research. Well, really everything I do, but especially my research, which I like to claim is practice-informed research. And embodiment, for me, is about being in the moment and honoring a past, but also being the vessel for something for the future. And so being fully present in that body and with everything you are in that moment is part of the work for me. And so that philosophy, that idea, that way of working, I ask people to be in that way when engaging or being in a project with me, as I do of myself. So yes, it's very important for me.
And the ways in which contemporary dance practice and contemporary dance scholarship use the concept of embodiment, does that relate to how you're using it, or do you need to find different or particular approaches in relation to this work within, for instance, the Roma community?
I think it can be slightly different. It often feels that the way contemporary dance practitioners, and these are gross generalizations, so I in no way mean to offend or, to say one is right or wrong, but I think that there's an elitist way of thinking about embodiment or a kind of higher understanding about the body, and that folk or community practices sometimes are removed from that in some way. So I've had to learn to remind myself that the way I might work with the community or the way the community works with the body and concepts or principles of embodiment are actually very similar to the way that a contemporary dance practitioner might consider embodiment. Maybe the language is slightly different, but again, that there's similarities there.
Yes, that's what I was wondering. Would you ever use the word embodiment, or would you find a different language to speak about the same thing? And how do people respond to that word, which does have a kind of sense of mystery about it, or a sense of being specialized?
Yes, I probably wouldn't use the word embodiment in a kind of everyday, if I'm with the community. I might use it in a flamenco context, but in that environment I would be probably speaking Spanish. So embodiment doesn't quite translate. So I would say sentir, estar en el momento, so being in the moment, really feel the senses, be with, and reconnect the mind and the body. And I would translate that in some way. And the same would be true if I were in a community setting. Embodiments wouldn't really come up, and that term wouldn't come up.
You said something briefly a moment ago about physical embodiment in relation to the past of culture, or bringing the past with you, or reconnecting to the past. Can you say a little bit more about what is that kind of embodiment?
Yes, I think the connection with the past for me, and the way I like to remind people, is to honor those people that came before us, and honoring the stories that are within our bodies that have been given to us and that we carry. And so remembering, and that kind of embodiment from our I know I'm going to use the word elder, and I know that's not the right word, that's just a direct translation, but those teachers, those older leaders, those wise people that have given us and taught us how to be in our bodies, it's in a way honoring them, and reconnecting with that is very important. And it's in flamenco, we have a term, and we'd say, I've been dancing for 150 years. And that's a phrase we use to remind us that there were people before us that have given us, that are still dancing with us, and therefore we're also giving and contributing to the future. And that's part of this embodiment, and this way of remembering the past, and remembering that we have histories inside of our body that we need to take care of.
You mentioned earlier this difficulty of the way that within contemporary dance practice and scholarship, there's a danger that the idea of embodiment becomes something specialized, and so not accessible, for instance, to somebody from folk dance. Can you say a bit more about that, or do you have any other questions or problems with the ways that the concept of embodiment is used?
It's about language for me, and the language is normalized in one environment and maybe not in the other. And in folk dance, the concept of community is very important, and relating to each other. And I think in perhaps, let's say, contemporary practice, it can feel quite individual. And so I feel that in the beginning, there's a bit of tension there. And that embodiment in folk or in flamenco, and some of, for me at least, in different practices, is about community, where I think in a contemporary setting, it's about the individual first, and that's the first entry point. So for me, that is where the problem kind of starts.
And this more collective embodiment, how does that work? What are the effects of that you witness or experience?
I think it comes out in that there's a conversation that manifests itself with the body to bodies and with the space, those that are in the space, but then those that are not in the space, those that we're honoring and remembering. And that conversation might be with a musician, might be with the other dancers, might be with a tuning in and listening to the environment in a different way. Where I think in another environment, my experience of embodiment within a contemporary dance studio class or studio, because I've also trained in that and so I'm speaking from experience in that way as well, has been very much about the individual first, and then tuning into the other, or the musician, or the environment.
Is embodiment more ordinary than we make it out to be?
Oh, that's there's two answers to that. Yes and no. Yes, it is, because we all know our bodies and can be and have an innate understanding of that, but we've lost the practice or the ability to tune into and to trust that embodiment. So yes and no for me.
That feels like a good place to pause. Thank you so much, Rosa, for sharing those thoughts with us today.